Everyone, Sarah here with the City of Tampa's Visual Arts team. Today's video is going to be on casting resin jewelry. This stuff is really cool because you can, there's endless possibilities of things that you can make with this resin stuff, the epoxy, especially when you use the clear. So the supplies you're going to need for this are that resin, the two-part epoxy resin. This is some stuff that I got at Home Depot. People usually use it in bars to seal the top of the counter. And I really like this stuff. I've used it a lot. It's pretty much the same thing as the craft ones that you can get at Michael's or Amazon. I'm also using alcohol inks because when you use the resin, it does not like moisture. So anything with moisture, with water, it's not going to work. I also have these silicone molds that I got on Amazon. I have popsicle sticks, little tiny spoons. I also have a needle tool, but you can use toothpicks. Other things you can use to color are like chalk or eyeshadow, or maybe acrylic paints would work too. So these are just some examples of the jewelry pieces that I made yesterday. Some of them have pressed dried flowers and leaves. Some of them just have chalk or alcohol inks just for the color. Some of them have sand. So there's all kinds of different things you can do with this. Make sure you're wearing gloves when you do this project, when you're working with that resin. It's not good for your skin. Also, try to be somewhere that's pretty well ventilated, next to a window or outside or something, because it does have a slight odor. So what you're gonna do, make sure that you have something to measure the amounts out with. So I just had a little spoon, and it doesn't have to be a certain amount, just make sure that it's the same. So you wanna have exactly, it's a 1-to-1 ratio when you mix these usually. So you're gonna wanna have the exact same amount. So I just poured them into this cup here, and I'm stirring it really well with a popsicle stick. You want to make sure that mixture is totally homogeneous before you move forward. You don't want to mix like a crazy person and get a bunch of bubbles in it, but you do want to make sure, stir it for a while and make sure that it's mixed well. So the first piece I wanted to show you guys how to do is like my favorite one. And it's kind of this like beach scene almost that's in a piece of jewelry. So I'm putting my sand down first because I did notice that the ones that I made yesterday, I liked how the back of the pieces looked better than the front of the pieces. And I think that's because I laid the resin down and then put things into it. So I'm gonna put that sand down in there first. Then I'm gonna use it's kind of an off-white chalk. And I'm using this tool to kind of just scrape some chalk powder in there. And that'll be kind of used as a colorant since I only have so many colors at home of the alcohol inks. Now I'm gonna put some of that resin in there. So when I do this, you wanna make sure, I always try to make sure that I'm going around along the edges first, because sometimes if you just start in the middle and start filling it up, it'll reach the edge of the mold and then trap a little pocket of air, and then you'll have to try to poke it out and pop it later. So here I'm just using a little bit of alcohol ink. You don't need a lot. This stuff is pretty potent, so I literally just put a drop on each side. And now I'm gonna kind of swirl it around. So what's really cool with this stuff too is that while it's, while it isn't cured and it's still liquid, you can move things around a little bit if they get displaced, or if you just want to give it a little bit more of an interesting look to it. You can use a toothpick, like I'm using the needle tool to swirl things around. I'm putting a little bit more of that off-white chalk dust in there because I want it to look like where the tide comes in and meets the sand and has that kind of like bubbly. And I'll just kind of swish that around. That also kind of helps with the bubbles, because if you don't get rid of them before it cures, you'll literally just have a bubble in your piece, which could look cool, but I'm gonna top it off with a little bit more of the resin just to make sure that it's even and that all the crevices are filled and everything. And sometimes too, when you have already added color and you add a little bit more of the resin, it moves the color around it a little bit more, and it can be pretty interesting when you do that. And then I'm just gonna take a teeny bit more sand and add it on there to the back just to kind of pack it in there pretty good. So this is the little beach pendant, and I think that's one of the ones that I showed you in the beginning that was like the teal, and this came out really cool. And you know, just showing you the pieces in the beginning of the video doesn't do them nearly as much justice as they should get, because they are absolutely gorgeous. I want to make some sort of sun catcher with these resin pieces because they're just gorgeous in the sunlight. All right, so I have off screen there, I have a huge dictionary that I found at the studio, and I was taking it around on Friday, and I was going out in the grass and around the studio and in the field, and I was picking different flowers and stuff. These came off of some, I don't know what they're called, but there's some bushes that are outside of the studio, but they were these little purple flowers, and I press dried them, so I put them inside the dictionary and just let them sit there for a couple days, and so they're nice and dried out, because like I said, the resin does not like anything with moisture in it. So with this one, I put those little dried flowers in it, and I put some of the gold alcohol ink in there and then just kind of swirled it around again. And I may have put too much of the alcohol ink in there. I don't know, we'll see when it comes out. This is just another little piece of the dried flowers, the pressed dried flowers. And this is I really like the gold. I'm not a gold fan per se, but I really like the gold alcohol ink because it can just give a little bit of if you put a very little bit, it gives it a nice little shine and kind of fancy look to it. So this one's just going to be the teal and the gold. So I put a little bit of the teal and then some of the gold. And if you notice, when I put some of that resin in there, it moved all the color out from where it was. It's heavier than the alcohol inks. But I'm going to swirl it around, and that'll kind of make it look a little tie-dyed almost, or marbled. This is just some of the chalk too, so I have a little bit of like a dark blue chalk, a little bit of yellow chalk, and I just put that dust in there, and I pour the resin in, and then I'll stir it up with my needle tool. And again, this is the chalks create a little bit more of a cloudy coloring than the alcohol inks. The alcohol inks are definitely more transparent or translucent than the chalk is. It's a little bit more of a milky color, but it can be really interesting if that's what you're going for. So I have some little crystals or whatever those are, so I'm just playing. I'm playing with anything and everything. I could have a little bit of red alcohol ink that I put in there. What's so cool about this is that you can literally, anything that's dry, you can put in these as long as it fits, obviously. But I mean, you can, do the pressed dried flowers and leaves, and you can put spices, like dry spices from your cabinet, or you can use like eyeshadow as like a colorant, glitter, the sand. I mean, anything that's dry, you can put all kinds of stuff in it. I saw some things on Pinterest where they printed transparencies with, images, just kind of black images on it, silhouettes, and they put those inside of their resin jewelry pieces, and it's really cool. So there's all kinds of stuff that you can do with this. There's another pressed flower. And then I'm going to use a few different flowers. Actually, I'm going to take these leaves apart first. I'm going to just take all these little leaves and put them around in this rectangle pendant, which I really like. And sometimes some things take longer to dry in the book than others. So just make sure that the thing that you're using is nice and kind of papery and dry. If it's not, it'll hinder the curing of the resin, and it could cause little bubbles as the moisture is trying to escape. So just make sure that everything's nice and dry. It's a lot easier to have these silicone molds on something, like these little thick pieces of paper that I have, because they're floppy. So if you try to move them, try to pick them up, you might pour some of your resin out. So here's some little flowers, and I'm gonna put them inside this big square pendant. And then I'm gonna put a little bit of yellow because I like the yellow alcohol ink and the yellow from the, from the pollen of the flower. So I just put a little bit, and then when you go and you put the resin in there, the alcohol ink just kind of like seeps up through it, and it just looks really, really cool. I am not wearing gloves anymore, if you've noticed. The only gloves I had at home were like those big, like sandwich making gloves that are really annoying to wear. So I'm just being really careful. I'm grabbing the cup, on the same spot every time so I don't touch the stuff or try not to. And then I'm gonna wash my hands really good with, and use like alcohol to get all this stuff off later. But do as I say, not as I do. Wear gloves the whole time. Okay, what am I gonna do next here? Oh, I was gonna cut out a picture from a book, and then I decided against it because I was like, how am I gonna get the shape right? My suggestion, if you wanna do anything like that, where you cut out if you have an old picture of someone, or you just wanna, cut out a picture of from a magazine or something and use that, or draw something, like doodle something, I would there are little silicone molds that you can order that are just like, they're individual, so it's not on like a sheet of different shapes. It's just each individual shape, and that would make it easier for you to cut the right size piece of paper to go in that. So that's all. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and we'll continue to make more of these videos as long as we are, waiting to get back in the studio. But I hope you all stay safe and stay kind, and we will see you next time.